Welcome to Modern Day Mystic with your host, me, Janine Barzali. I am and have been a medium, which means loved ones who've crossed over can come and talk to me for over 25 years professionally. I have been to multiple seminaries. I love the spiritual journey, and I just am here to talk about having a space to both be like a believer and somebody who wants to be into this field, as well as be a little skeptical, practical, and just know that there are two things that can happen at once. And I'm here just to share. That's all. You don't have to believe what I say. What I actually hope is that you are on your journey and I'm sharing, and hopefully something is helpful on your journey. And that's really what this whole entire intuitive psychic, even religious or spiritual it's about sharing our journeys, because this is the truth. Nobody really knows for certain. And if you have anybody or a guru who says that they know exactly what happens when we pass away, or exactly what happens this, or exactly what life is all about, chances are they just have not been on the journey long enough, because we just don't know. Today's topic is going to be a little bit about how to hone your own intuition, how to do what I call discernment. The reality is a lot of our intuitive feels not always are actually quite intuitive. They're more trauma-based or opinion-based, if you will, and there's nothing wrong with that, just so you know. I just want to make sure everyone knows that there's nothing wrong with having an experience which shapes your world. That's quite literally what life is about. Having said that, to not be able to discern what your experience that is shaping your world versus something that is, I guess, what I would say, a little bit more of a grander view of aspects, or, something that's more on that intuitive space, is really important, because, it's, you start to you can actually hone knowing yourself more. And that's really what this is all about. This intuition is not really about seeing the future. It's not really about, or at least in my opinion, I'm going to say that, in my opinion, it's not about seeing the future. It's not about circumventing choices. It's not about taking away accountability for ourselves. It's more about getting to know who we are, getting to know that there's something grander than ourselves, and having a trusting and loving relationship with that. It took me a long time, I could read just about anyone so easily, but to read myself, super hard. Why? Well, I have good opinions. It's not an outside perspective. That's the truth. But there are some practical ways to hone your intuitive abilities. And I just want to talk pretty quickly about a couple things that really, really help if you're in a point where, one, you're like, I feel like I'm getting intuitive information all the time, I just don't know what to do with it. Or if you're kind of feeling like you're batted around by what you feel versus like what is practical in the world. There are some really practical things I think everyone should do. And so I always say we start with some sort of we can call it grounding, but really some sort of base in which I call it like to go home to. And what do I mean by that is you just want to have a kind of rote, simplistic, practice that just is simple and makes you feel, safe, not battered around, free. And for me, that is, I always say, I'm going to go to the highest of the high, the most benevolent of most benevolent, the most loving of all loving, the space in which love and truth reigns, I connect to that place first. That could be a name for you. You can call it God. You can call it spirit. I always kind of, again, you can really call it whatever you want. I shy away from the universe. I'm going to tell you why. The universe, one, is fixed. There are many universes out there. Okay? Two, it's pretty chaotic. I mean, it's really chaotic. There's explosions and that. To me, the energy of the universe is not, isn't really safe. Like that's to me, I'm like, that seems like a lot of energy. So I shy away from having like a fixed space that has, that's not, that has kind of volatilization within it. Having said that, if it works for you, it works for you. I don't know. That's just how I feel. I like to have this space in a way that's outside of religious and spiritual practices that are known now. That was not always my path, and I want to make sure that everyone understands this. We grow as we as we go on our spiritual path, as we get older. Our spirituality should change. Our understanding should change. So there was a long time where it was a little bit more fixed, more in a really a religious context for myself. And I don't think that that's a bad thing, just so everyone knows. I don't think I did something wrong. I think I started to grow with my own understanding, and all is good. So you need to go with what feels like home to you. For me, I actually had great experiences and safety feelings in churches. So for me, that was actually a comforting space. Other people don't, and for right reason. So again, this is so highly individualized, but I don't want you to feel like you should go against what feels good to you, what feels safe to you. The biggest thing is that I always say like that's not what you're not worshiping a container, or what you're worshiping what's inside a container. So I look at religion, spirituality practices, yoga, which is also a religion, just so we all understand that piece. Meditation, all of those are just, for me, are containers in which can hold a spiritual or a truth. And that container, depending on where I'm at, will shift, right? If I'm really thirsty, it's like if we're gonna need some water, right? If I'm super thirsty, I might want a huge jug of water, and that's that container. If I'm not that thirsty, I might just have like a small juice glass. It all depends on what your needs are, and so the container should be able to switch. It's what's inside that's where, for me, I always sit with benevolence, truth, and love. Safety. That's big for me. So honing a practice that just feels like something that is not complicated, that you can do, that brings you back to a place of peace, that gives you an anchor, that even when you're in a crazy, like when you're in the thick of being nervous or scared or what have you, that you can like go back to it. This is where we see the wisdom of rote prayer, mantra, practices that you do over and over and over again, because when you're in the thick of it, it's something you can rely on. And it's not, like I said, it does not have to be something completely new. It could be something you grew up with that feels right. I can't help, I grew up Catholic, so the Hail Mary is like a go-to for me when I don't know what else to do. Not because again, it's just the container, but because I know it so well. And therefore it can bring me into a space. So that's really your first intuitive practice piece. And it's more important than we think, because right now, everybody's spirituality is shifting. The foundation in which we all were in is, and should be, okay, moving. And so it's good as when your foundation is shifting, or maybe it's never even been there, and it's been cracking, to actually ask yourself, what is it that feels right to me? Not what was prescribed to me by somebody else, but what is it that I can have ownership of? It's a growth spot, because when we create the practice that we have ownership of, then in a way it takes away that blame that the system is wrong. It puts it more in our own agency. And intuition is always about your own agency. And that's my second piece. And I'm going to kind of do this short so that you could just sit with this, and then we'll go to the next piece in another video. But your own agency is so important to fight against, or not fight against, maybe that's not good, to be safe from being controlled. One of the things that I see all the time in the spiritual fields, particularly in the psychic fields, is I always hear like, Spirit is telling me this, God is telling me this, the guides are saying this. And while it's fine to have those connections, the reality is you shouldn't be doing anything unless you have also agreed. You don't give up your power. You have a relationship with. You don't have a blind follow, which is fundamentally different than what most of us have grown up to believe. Or, this like, and I think that our times right now are really showing what the difference of just having sheer loyalty for loyalty's sake versus having agency, collaboration, cooperation, and love as the guiding force. Not anyone, whether they are here on, physically here present on earth, somebody who's crossed over, or a, deity of some sort of sense. Nothing should ever force you to go against your own will, safety, and love. That's an abusive relationship. If you don't understand something, then continued conversation, collaboration, understanding should be what is met. And like I said, this is actually hugely different. How many times have we had the experience in a religious setting where you're like, I don't think this feels right, and someone tries to convince you, or the conversion experience, someone's trying to convert you into believing what they want. No, nothing that is truth will need to convert. It will just be truth, and eventually that truth will still stay there, and eventually you will, if it's truth, we will see it, especially if that's what we seek. So to understand, and this is always something for me that I like to teach, and this is kind of why I call it modern day mysticism, is to take away from this idea that we're just these vessels to be used versus we are part of a loving relationship in which, trust and message, all of these things aren't, in a way like we're some sort of puppet, but that we are and have agency and a divinity too. And I think that's super important, especially when we want to try to discern different messages. It's also, to me, one of the biggest indications of message discernment. Do I feel like I'm forced to do something? Or if I don't do this, I'm going to be punished or I'm going to have a wrong answer? Or do I feel like whatever way I go, I have agency and accountability within myself, as well as I'm treated with love and care? If I don't understand something, I don't want to be, I don't want, again, anybody, whether they're here on earth or whether they're in spirit or whether it's some sort of deity, if I'm going to be punished for not understanding something or, needing clarification, like, not something I really want to be connected to. And so I really, really encourage what I call maturity of spiritual relationship. And also know that this, like I said, I don't know all the answers. And I think that the truth, whatever that may be, and I do believe that there is a larger truth, not just our personal truths, not just what we want to see or what someone else wants to see. I do believe that there is a bigger space. So for me, I feel like no matter what, that will be revealed in the time that it needs to be, or that I can understand it to be. So, there's a nice freedom in that. There's also an accountability to our decisions, which a lot of times the spiritual fields kind of take away us being accountable for our choices, us being accountable for the consequences, both good and not so great, to what we put out into the world, how we affect the greaterness of everything. So that's a little bit of a different spin than the foundation that most of us were brought up to be. So it, what does it say? With great power comes great responsibility. Quoting Spider-Man, and I don't know why I want to talk in this phase, but I am. But that is probably one of what I call, even though it's from Spider-Man, a really good wisdom, phrase, a really good wisdom understanding. That, if you're into being intuitive in this so that you can, kind of like capitalize on it, chances are you're probably going to get information that's a little wonky, because it isn't in the space where you're going to take responsibility for it. And that's the first thing. So your first task, if you will, is to just find something. Small practice, I'm going to say 5 minutes maximum, in which you can come to do daily, that just brings you into a homeostasis, a safety spot in which you deem, your spiritual base, with knowing that That might change over time. But what I would say is kind of keep with it for at least 6 months. Because if you're like me and you're ADHD, you're gonna think of like a million different things and you never get to collapse. So just pick one thing, collapse on it for 6 months. If it isn't working, then try something else. Good luck, and I'll see you next video.